Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something really fundamental.
Yeah.
It's from a classic chapter, the one called The Big Secret of Dealing with People.
Right, quite a title. It really promises something big. And our goal here in this deep dive is to sort of unpack that core idea, the single most powerful way the author claims you can influence anyone.
Exactly. And we're going to find some insights that are maybe simpler than you'd think, but really profound about what drives us. So let's just jump right in. What's this core secret the material talks about?
Okay, so the main argument here is pretty stark, actually. It says there's really only one way, just one single way to get anybody to do anything.
Only one way. That sounds, well, it sounds a bit extreme, doesn't it? Because you see people being forced to do things all the time.
You do.
Like, someone with a weapon demanding your wallet, or maybe a boss saying, do this, or you're fired.
Yeah, absolutely. And the source acknowledges that you can use crude methods, threats, force, but it immediately points out these things have, and I quote, sharply undesirable repercussions.
Ah, okay. So they work, but badly. Like they create resentment, fear, that kind of thing.
Precisely. They don't create genuine willingness, not in the long run. So they aren't the real way, the effective way this source is talking about.
Okay, so if brute force and threats are out because of the downsides, then the only actual way, the only effective way, is to make the other person want to do it.
That's exactly it. That's the fundamental principle laid out here. The only path to genuinely influencing someone is by tapping into something they desire. You have to give them what they want.
Right, which obviously leads to the next big question. What do people actually want?
Well, the chapter starts with the obvious ones: health, food, sleep, money.
The basics for survival and comfort.
Exactly. Belief in an afterlife comes up, sexual gratification, the well-being of our kids, all those primal drives.
Makes sense.
But then it digs a bit deeper. It brings in figures like Freud, mentioning the sex urge and the desire to be great, and John Dewey, the philosopher, who apparently called the deepest urge in human nature the desire to be important.
The desire to be important. That phrase seems central to this whole argument.
It really is. And here's the key insight. While most of those basic needs, food, sleep, safety, they usually get met, more or less, right?
Yeah, for most people, most of the time.
But this one, this desire to be important, or as William James put it, the craving to be appreciated, this is often starved, chronically unsatisfied.
A craving. That sounds intense. Not just a passing fancy.
No. The source uses strong language. It calls it a gnawing and unfaltering human hunger. It even says this hunger is almost as deep, almost as imperious as the desire for food or sleep.
Wow. As basic as needing to eat or sleep. That's a powerful claim, but it's a hunger that often goes unfed.
That's the idea. And the source suggests this very desire is a key thing that separates humans from animals.
How so?
It uses a simple picture. A farmer, proud, showing off the prize ribbons his pigs or cows won at the fair.
Right. The pigs don't care about the ribbons.
Exactly. But the farmer does. That feeling of pride, of recognition, of importance, that's the human element.
And this craving, this desire for importance, it's supposedly the driving force behind, a lot of big achievements, even civilization itself.
That's the argument. It points to Lincoln, driven by a flaming urge for a feeling of importance, studying law books he found in a junk barrel. It's the same drive it suggests that pushed Dickens to write, Sir Christopher Wren to design masterpieces, even Rockefeller to amass millions he couldn't possibly spend.
Or why some people build those huge houses, way bigger than they need.
That's another example given, yes. And it shows up in everyday things, too, doesn't it?
Right.
Like wanting the newest fashion, the latest car model, talking maybe a bit too much about how brilliant our kids are.
Ah, yeah. Seeking status or recognition in smaller ways.
Exactly. But the material is careful to show the dark side, too. This same desire, when twisted or unmet, can lure young people into gangs, into crime. They're seeking a kind of importance, maybe notoriety that they don't find elsewhere.
Like those stories of infamous criminals. Dillinger, wasn't it? Proud of being public enemy number one.
Yes, exactly that. He apparently declared, "I'm Dillinger," after being caught, almost boasting. There's a quote from a police commissioner, Mulrooney, saying many young criminals were full of ego, desperate to see their picture in the papers.
So the source basically says how you try to get that feeling of importance reveals who you are.
It puts very directly. If you tell me how you get your feeling of importance, I'll tell you what you are. It suggests it's perhaps the most fundamental aspect of character.
Wow, so it contrasts someone like Rockefeller, finding importance through philanthropy, like funding a hospital,
Impacting lives positively.
versus someone like Dillinger finding it through violence and crime.
Right. The same deep-seated hunger, just channeled in vastly different directions. One constructive, one destructive.
And it seems even, well, famous historical figures weren't immune to this craving. The source has some funny examples.
Oh, absolutely. It recounts George Washington wanting the title, His Mightiness the President of the United States. Can you imagine?
No, not really.
Or Columbus apparently pleading to be called Admiral of the Ocean and Viceroy of India. Catherine the Great insisting on her imperial majesty on all letters.
Even Mrs. Lincoln getting upset with Mrs. Grant about seating arrangements.
Yes, and millionaires bankrolling Admiral Byrd's expeditions just to get mountains named after them. Victor Hugo hoping Paris might be renamed in his honor. Even Shakespeare wanting a coat of arms for his family.
It really drives home how universal and powerful this feeling is. It cuts across everything.
It certainly seems to, and the source then takes it into even more, well, extreme territory, discussing how this deep need can manifest in really sad ways, like through sickness.
You mean people using illness, consciously or not, to get attention, to feel important?
That's the idea presented. There's the example of Mrs. McKinley, President McKinley's wife, who seemed to use her invalidism to command his constant attention, even demanding he stay while she got dental work done. And another story from Mary Roberts Rinehart about a woman who became an invalid for 10 years, possibly seeking importance through being cared for, and then suddenly recovered after her mother, her main caregiver, passed away.
Wow. That suggests sickness can become a strategy almost to satisfy that hunger.
A desperate one, perhaps.
Yeah.
And it connects this even to mental illness, to insanity.
How does it make that connection?
It mentions a sobering statistic about mental diseases and cites a head physician who suggested that while some cases have physical causes, maybe half seem to lack any clear organic reason.
Okay. So the implication is?
The implication explored is that for some, reality becomes so unbearable, so devoid of the importance they crave, that they retreat into a fantasy world. They essentially go insane to find it.
That's incredibly bleak.
It is. The source shares a detailed story from this physician about a patient. Her real life was empty, loveless. In her mind, she divorced her husband, reclaimed her maiden name, believed she'd married into English aristocracy,
Goodness.
insisted on being called Lady Smith, and, get this, imagined she gave birth to a new baby every night.
She literally created a reality where she had everything she felt she lacked: status, family, importance.
Exactly. And the physician's comment on her situation is just devastatingly poignant. He said, "If I could stretch out my hand and restore her sanity, I wouldn't do it. She's much happier as she is."
That hits hard. It shows the sheer power of this need.
It really does. And that leads to the crucial pivot in the material. If people are that desperate for importance, driven to such extremes, imagine the positive power, the miracle, as the source puts it, you could achieve by giving genuine, honest appreciation to people before they reach such points.
So that's the solution proposed. Honest appreciation.
Yes, that's where it lands. And it uses a really compelling example. Charles Schwab, first president of U.S. Steel, earning over $1 million a year way back in 1921.
Which is an astronomical sum then.
Absolutely. $50 a week was considered pretty good. And the point made is his huge salary wasn't primarily for his technical knowledge of steel.
No. What was it for then?
Schwab himself, according to the source, admitted many of his employees knew more about making steel than he did. He believed he was paid that much, largely because of his ability to deal with people.
Okay, so what was his secret? How did he deal with people so effectively?
His own words, highlighted in the chapter, are key. "I consider my ability to arouse enthusiasm among my people. The greatest asset I possess, and the way to develop the best that is in a person, is by appreciation and encouragement."
Appreciation and encouragement, not driving them with criticism.
Exactly. He's quoted saying, "There is nothing else that so kills the ambitions of a person as criticisms from superiors. I never criticize anyone." Which sounds maybe a bit absolute, but his focus was clear. "I believe in giving a person incentive to work, so I am anxious to praise, but loath to find fault."
Anxious to praise, but loath to find fault.
And then this phrase, "If I like anything, I am hearty in my approbation and lavish in my praise."
Hardy and lavish.
Yeah.
That really paints a picture. It's the opposite of what the source says most people do, right?
It is. The chapter points out that the average person does the reverse. quick to criticize or bawl out when things are wrong, but totally silent when things go right.
Yeah, there's that little rhyme mention.
Once I did bad and that I heard ever. Twice I did good, but that I heard never.
That definitely rings true sometimes, doesn't it? It's easier to notice the negatives.
It often seems to be. And Schwab's big takeaway from dealing with all sorts of people was that everyone, no matter how high their position, simply does better work and tries harder under a spirit of approval than he would ever do under a spirit of criticism.
That makes intuitive sense. And there were other examples, right? Like Andrew Carnegie.
Yes, Carnegie, Schwab's boss originally, he apparently made a point of praising people, publicly and privately, even wanted his tombstone to reflect his ability to manage talented people, which implies using this principle.
And Rockefeller. Even him.
Even Rockefeller, known for being reserved. There's a story about his partner, Edward Bedford, who made a bad investment, lost $1 million overseas. A huge sum.
Rockefeller must have been furious.
You'd think, but instead of criticizing the loss, Rockefeller found something positive. Bedford had actually managed to salvage 60% of the investment, so Rockefeller focused on that. He said something like, "That's splendid. We don't always do as well as that upstairs." Praise the part that went right, not the failure.
Wow, that's discipline. Applying the principle even under pressure. It clearly works in business. But what about, closer to home? Personal relationships.
Arguably even more vital there. The source tells this, maybe exaggerated, but very vivid story about a farm wife.
Oh, yeah.
She serves her husband and farmhands a big pile of hay for dinner one night. Just hay.
What? Why?
Well, when they react, shocked, she says something like, "Why? How was I supposed to know you'd notice? I've been cooking for you men for 20 years, and not once did I hear a word to suggest you weren't just eating hay all along."
Oof, that's stark. A cry for acknowledgement, right? Feeling completely taken for granted.
Exactly. And the source mentions a study. It says the main reason cited by wives for leaving home was lack of appreciation. It even speculates the same would be true for runaway husbands.
We just forget to appreciate the people closest to us sometimes. It's easy to do. Are you making sure the people in your life feel seen?
It's a good question for all of us. There's another story, a really lovely one, from someone who attended a class related to this material. His wife asked him to list 6 things he'd like to change about her.
Ooh, that sounds like a trap.
Right. He said it would have been easy to list things, but he thought about it overnight. The next morning, instead of a list of criticisms, he sent her 6 red roses.
Nice move.
And a note that said, "I can't think of 6 things I would like to change about you. I love you the way you are."
Oh, wow. How did she react?
She was apparently almost in tears when he got home. Deeply touched. People who heard about it called it incredibly considerate. It just shows the sheer power of appreciation in a relationship.
It really does.
Huh.
The source also mentioned Florin Ziegfeld, the showman.
Yeah, Ziegfeld, famous for his follies.
Okay.
The point wasn't just that he paid his performers well, but that his gallantry, his consideration, sending roses, treating them beautifully, it made them feel genuinely appreciated and glamorous. He glorified them.
There's that analogy, too, about feeding people.
Right. We carefully feed our bodies, give them roast beef and potatoes, but we starve their self-esteem. We neglect to offer those kind words of appreciation that would sing in their memories for years.
It's like emotional nourishment.
Yeah.
Or lack thereof.
Exactly. And that story about Stevie Wonder, told by Paul Harvey, is just incredible. His teacher, instead of focusing on his blindness, noticed his amazing hearing.
Yeah.
She used his hearing to help the class find a mouse that got loose. She appreciated his unique strength, and Stevie Wonder himself said that was a turning point the first time someone showed appreciation for his ears. It spurred him on, helped launch his whole life and career.
That's amazing. Okay, but let's address the elephant in the room. Some listeners might be thinking, okay, fine, but this just sounds like flattery, being insincere just to get what you want.
And that's a really important point the source tackles head on. It directly addresses that skepticism. Oh, phooey, flattery. It argues that crude flattery rarely works on perceptive people anyway. Why? Because it's shallow, selfish, and insincere.
It calls it counterfeit, right? Like fake money.
Exactly. It might look okay on the surface, but it has no real value and can get you into trouble.
So what is the actual difference then between the appreciation this material advocates for and just, well, empty flattery?
The difference boils down to 2 things: sincerity and motive. Appreciation, the genuine article, is described as sincere, unselfish, coming from the heart out. It's something people admire.
Okay, and flattery.
Flattery is the opposite. Insincere, selfish, coming from the teeth out, and it's universally condemned when people see through it.
Reminds me of that quote from the General Obregon. Don't fear enemies who attack, fear friends who flatter.
Precisely. Or King George V's motto, teach me neither to proffer nor receive cheap praise. Flattery is cheap. The source even defines it amusingly as telling the other person precisely what he thinks about himself.
Huh. That's cynical, but probably true sometimes.
But the core idea comes back to Emerson's quote.
Yeah.
Use what language you will.
Yeah.
You can never say anything but what you are. If you're not sincere, it will show.
Your true feelings, or lack thereof, will leak out somehow.
Exactly. The appreciation has to be real. It has to come from actually noticing and valuing something good in the other person. You can't fake it effectively long term.
Which sort of leads to the next practical step,
Yeah.
right? Making this a habit. How do you find things to genuinely appreciate? Especially since, as the source notes, we spend like 95% of our time thinking about ourselves.
Well, the suggestion is a conscious shift in focus. Deliberately stop thinking about yourself quite so much and actively look for the other person's good points. Train yourself to see the positive.
If you're genuinely looking for the good, you won't need to invent flattery.
That's the idea. And it means noticing things that often go unnoticed. Simple things. A child brings home a good report card. Don't just grunt. Praise the effort.
Or they try baking something for the first time or build something clumsy.
Right. The source emphasizes how much that kind of specific interest and approval means to kids. Nothing pleases children more.
And it applies beyond family, too.
Absolutely. Simple things in daily life. Tell the chef the meal was great. Thank a shop assistant who is genuinely helpful or courteous. Acknowledge a colleague who went the extra mile.
These small acts. The source calls them legal tender that all souls enjoy.
Yeah, I like that phrase. And it says they can light small flames of friendship. It's about creating warmth and connection.
There's that story about Pamela Dunham and the janitor, wasn't there? That really showed it in action.
It's a fantastic illustration. Criticism and ridicule had completely failed to motivate this janitor. He just didn't care, did a poor job.
So what changed?
She started noticing any small thing he did well. Maybe one section of the floor was cleaned properly. She specifically praised that. And gradually, he started doing more sections well. He responded to the positive reinforcement.
And eventually.
Eventually, he became an excellent janitor, doing the whole job well, earning praise from others, too. Honest appreciation transformed his performance where negativity had achieved nothing.
That's powerful. It makes you think about that saying the chapter suggests putting on your mirror.
I shall pass this way but once, any good, or any kindness. Let me do it now, for I shall not pass this way again.
It's a call to act on those positive impulses, isn't it? Don't put off appreciation.
Well, exactly. And that ties back to Emerson again. Every man I meet is my superior in some way. In that, I learn of him. If you approach people with that mindset, looking for what you can learn or admire,
You'll always find something genuine to appreciate.
precisely. So the final instruction from the source material is really clear. Forget flattery, give honest, sincere appreciation, be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise, and people will cherish your words.
Then treasure them maybe for their whole lives. It's quite a thought.
It really is.
Okay, so let's try to distill this. As we wrap up this deep dive, the second key principle that emerges so strongly from this material is
What? It's simply this. Give honest and sincere appreciation.
give honest and sincere appreciation. It feels like we've really uncovered something powerful here. This source argues that tapping into that deep, deep human hunger for importance, for feeling valued, by offering genuine appreciation, well, it's presented as the most effective way to connect, to influence, far beyond force or fakeness.
Yeah, the contrast is stark, isn't it? The damage done by criticism or neglect versus the almost miraculous potential of sincere praise.
Definitely makes you think about your own interactions. You know, the people you deal with every day, at work, at home, even casually. Are you consciously looking for the good? Are you expressing it?
And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with, something provocative based on those more extreme examples we looked at. If that hunger for importance is so powerful, it can drive people to sickness, or even, tragically, into losing touch with reality when it's denied. Just think about the untapped positive potential sitting right there in your everyday relationships. What kind of miracles, big or small, could you spark just by making a conscious effort to offer sincere, honest appreciation more often? Whose day, whose confidence, maybe even whose life path could you positively influence starting today with just a few genuine words of praise?